Greetings to everyone who is watching. My name is Kervin M. Pinopino, and today I'm going to discuss global food security. But before all of the discussion, let us tackle first the lesson objectives for this video. So first is to explain the different aspects of food security. Second is to identify the food insecurity issues faced by households, communities, and countries. The third one will be describe the different social, political, economic, and environmental conditions that affect food security, and the last one and the fourth would be purpose actions for communities, civil society actors, and governance to achieve food security. So, let's discuss first the definition of terms. First one would be food security, the condition of which everyone is able to access sufficient, safe, and nutritious food anytime. The second one would be undernourishment. It is the condition by which a person only has access on a regular basis to food that are insufficient in providing the required energy for a normal, healthy, and active life, provided his or her dietary and energy requirements. There is more than sufficient food produced globally to meet the food needs of all the people on the planet. But despite all of this, there are 124 million people experience acute hunger today, and approximately 40 million higher than the numbers from 2 years ago. So in addition, stunted children are approximately 151 million, and wasted children are estimated to be 51 million worldwide. Furthermore, small-scale farmers, fishers, and rural workers produce approximately 70% of food globally, but are among the most vulnerable sector to food insecurity. So it explains here that fishing or fishers, small-scale farmers and rural workers are most vulnerable sectors of our food security. This data reflecting the world status on hunger shows the urgency of ensuring global food security. Food security is projected to remain a worldwide issue for the coming decades. So food security is a problem not only in the present but also in the near future. It is a continuous problem that we are facing right now. The concept of food security emerged during the mid 70s. So the food security, the definition of or the word or the definition itself, food security, emerged during the mid-70s. It recognizes the global issues of chronic food insecurity. Food insecurity is the phenomenon. It is a phenomenon where people do not have adequate physical, social, and economic access to food. Food security brings into public policy the food-related problems of famine, hunger, and food crisis. Nations and global institutions make various commitments to achieve. So there are many attempts, or there are commitments to eradicate this certain kind of problem, to achieve and eradicate hunger and food insecurity. Despite actions to address these issues, global food security remains to be a major concern. So even after those efforts to eradicate food insecurities, it is also a major concern for today's timeline or today's present. The concept of food security gained prominence in the 1970s. First, hunger was seen as a lack of food supply. The focus of government programs to make food available was boosting of agricultural production and maintaining price stability of food. However, in 1981, Amartya Sen argued that hunger or starvation is not only about the supply of food but people's lack of access to food despite the availability of food. So the source is also not a problem, but actually the source was not a problem to them, the agricultural production and maintaining price stability of food. But according to Amartya Sen, he argued that hunger or starvation is not only about the supply, so it is not only circles around the supply, but people's lack of access, the access or the access of the people when it comes to food, despite the food being available to them. This resulted in broadening the concept of food security to include access to food, which are located in the wider concerns of poverty and development. In 1986, World Bank introduced that food insecurity can be a permanent or temporary phenomenon. So it could be permanent or it could be temporary phenomenon. It would change or it could change, giving rise to the ideas of chronic and transitory hunger. Chronic food insecurity recognizes the perennial problem of food insecurity, while transitory food insecurity talks about the momentary shortage of food. This pushes policy to recognize that sufficient food must be accessible at all times. So these policies, because of these fundamentals or these affecting factors, it pushes the policies of not globally but not nationally but global. It influence global awareness to push the policies to recognize that sufficient food food must be accessible at all times. Finally, food security was extended to include issues of food quality. So there is also a problem when it comes to food quality. It ensures the utilization of food that meets people's nutritional balance, traditions, and preferences. Food utilization. Hence, the important aspects of food security are availability. Here's the important aspects of food security. It is availability, access, utilization, and stability. In this slide, measurements for food security and food security. There are certain measurements for us to be able to understand the phenomenon of food security and food insecurity. There are various measures and indices have been developed. These measures helps us to become the basis for actions to eradicate food security and demand accountability from governments. These measurements and indices can encompass. These measurements can be a guide or can be it would help us analyze the causes and effects, either qualitative or quantitative, and may be done in several levels, from household levels to national levels. So these measurements can help us assess what is needed in that certain kind of area when it comes to food security and food insecurity. In this next slide, prevalence of undernourishment and the prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity in the population of the Food and Agriculture Organizations, or FAO. So POU measures hunger on several levels in the regional and global levels by gathering data on food availability, consumption, and energy requirements. Some factors being measured are only per their capita food consumption, human energy requirements, and agricultural production. On the other hand, the prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity in the population collects data through interviews regarding people's experiences of difficulty in accessing food. Data can reflect individual and household levels and can show which part of the population are most food insecure. So FAO assesses people in terms of interviews. So they interview people in that certain kind of area to assess if that area is if it is food secure or food insecure, and it assess what are the nourishments if the people is or having these important nourishments for them and nutrients for them in their food. So here in the next slide, it discusses Global Hunger Index or GHI. So in GHI, it is published by Concern International and Wealthy Hunger Life. It looks in indicators such as the share of the population related to. So as what is seen in the GHI, these factors is their basis, or these indicators is their standardized scores to come up with the Global Hunger Index score of each country. So it assesses each country. The GHI can monitor the state. So GHI can monitor hunger in the national and global levels to inform policy and actions where they are needed. So GHI can be a basis for, or can give awareness if there is needed action or policy in that certain kind of problem, especially when it comes to food. So in this slide, it discusses Hunger Reduction Commitment Index. So what is Hunger in the Reduction Commitment Index? The HRCI is dedicated to assess the government on their commitment in food security. It is initiated by Institute of Development Studies and looks into three themes that measures the government's political commitment in attaining food security, government policies and programs, legal framework, and public expenditures. So this, or the HRCI is made, or in this institute, it is made to assess the government's commitment in solving the food insecurities. So there are factors that affecting food security. The first one would be food supply. As mentioned, early concepts and policies on food security focus on agricultural production. So most of the policies or the early concepts and policies on food security focus mostly on agricultural production. To ensure the availability of food security involves sustainable supplying in the energy and protein needs and healthy diet of the people. So the next one would be food prices. This factor greatly affects the food security of a certain kind of country or globally. Food prices changes in national and global economic policies and process may lead to increases in oil and food prices. For example, in the Philippines, inflation hit 4.5% in April 2018, leading to a drastic rise in food prices. So, food prices or food price is a great factor that affects food security, especially for the poor. The next one would be people's income. So in here, people's income is another problem associated with food security. So because actually it is a common sense, okay? Because if there is no income, you cannot buy food for yourself or for your family. You cannot sustain the needs of your family if you don't have that certain kind of income, because like I've said earlier, food prices is also a problem. So if the food price is much larger or more expensive and the people's income is much lower, so it is kind of hard to sustain the food for your family or for your own needs. The another factor that changes, or the another factors that affects food security is changes and shocks in social and natural environments. Variability and shocks in the social and natural environment may affect food availability, accessibility, and stability. For instance, climate change may affect the timing and length of growing and harvesting seasons, amount of water supply, and degradation of resources such as erosion. So, changes and shocks in social and natural phenomenon. So, we all know that we all know that climate change is a really big factor when it comes to food, especially in the agriculture sector. It is quite hard for us to grow our crops because our land is very dry. So these factors, these changes in our natural and social environments greatly affects how our food security is, or what it is right now. Globalization and food security. Food security that is linked to the complex process of food production, consumption, and distribution intersects with issues of trading, reforms in agriculture, as well as development, as well as rural development. So globalization and food security. Food security has many. Food security is linked with very wide, complex process. How do we process our food? How do we export it? What are the ingredients for this certain kind of food? What chemicals are used for this? Because these factors may affect our health, our nutrients, the nutrients needed for a certain kind of human or a certain kind of person. So policies are to be made for food security. If that certain kind of product or food is processed, it needs to be assessed and to be looked at. Commitments to achieve food security. There are the recognizing the urgency and severity of world food security problems. World leaders have made global commitments to address food security. So the UN also is focusing on these certain kind of problems. In 1996, the World Food Summit was convened by the Food and Agriculture Organization of FAQ in Rome, where UN member states committed to eradicate hunger and reduce undernourished people. So in 1996, there was a certain kind of organization that was made to eradicate hunger and to reduce undernourished people. It is a continuous effort to eliminate hunger in all countries. So it is not focused on a certain kind of country. It also focuses globally. It influences globally. The next one would be, with a short-term goal of decreasing the number of undernourished individuals to half. So their target was half of the population would become or would not become undernourished. The commitment was later reaffirmed during the UN Millennium Summit in 2000 that resulted in the formulation of Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs. The first goal of MDGs is to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. This goal has 3 targets. As you can see in the PowerPoint, the first goal was to significantly decrease the number of people with daily income below $1.25. The second is to attain full, constructive, and decent employment for all, and the third one would be to significantly decrease the number of people suffering from hunger. So these goals was made to eradicate or to solve food security. In 2015, UN member states adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Agenda. This encompasses the 17 sustainable development goals that will guide governments, private sectors, and civil society to address the global issues of poverty, inequalities, and climate change. Sustainable development goal number 2 is to achieve zero hunger. These commitments takes a lot of time to process. We can't solve food security, the problem of food security, that very quick, because of there are too many factors that is affecting what is happening when it comes to food security. Especially when our world is battling against climate change. Climate change is a very great factor for food productions, agricultures, our environment changes, how our society change. Food and nourishments are not so sustainable, and the food that we are eating right now is like it lacks the nourishment needed for a certain kind of person. So we just wait for the process the process of food security, or how do we eradicate. It takes a lot of time to eradicate the problem of food security. That will be all, and my name is Kervin M. Pinopino, and thank you for listening.